Thank you so much for staying with us. In this section of the program, we have the opposition spokesperson on justice, Attorney at Law Zulieka Jess. She's also the MP for North East St. Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it. So the bill itself, broadly speaking, what's your view?
So generally, the truth of the matter is, especially considering that I'm the Member of Parliament for one of those constituencies that was severely affected by Hurricane Melissa, I understand the importance and the need to move with alacrity and speed to get the reconstruction projects streamlined and implemented.
I hear a but.
There is, of course, a but. We want to see all those infrastructure being reconstructed. We want to see Santa Cruz getting proper drainage and other similar areas. But at the same time, we do not believe that we should sacrifice accountability and transparency on the altar of expediency. And a quick review of the Act will reveal that where there is expected to be a balance between speed of getting things done, getting projects implemented, as well as maintaining accountability and transparency, the Act is actually skewed towards speed, but not ensuring accountability. For example, very quickly, if you think about the fact that it gives very wide powers in terms of procurement powers, but it doesn't make it explicitly clear that the authority will be subject to the usual rules of procurement, of public procurement, meaning that it doesn't make it clear that certain things would have to go to competitive tender. And in circumstances where you utilize non-competitive methods, it doesn't make it clear that you should actually give reasons for adopting a particular course, just to make sure that there is transparency. It speaks about establishing a register of approved projects, and we welcome that. That is to be applauded. But at the same time, it doesn't state that the name of the successful contractor or the service provider should be included. It doesn't state that the amount of the contract should be stated. It doesn't state that persons, the general public, should be aware of the status of the projects in terms of the completion state that they're at. It doesn't even state, when should the completion date begin, or when should the project start, or when should the completion date be established as at. So there are a number of things that we believe are actually missing from the Act, and those cause great concern. We're concerned about the concentration of power in one single individual, the CEO. We are of the view that in this modern dispensation, you get better results when you have a board actually meeting, and you can have various minds as opposed to one individual overseeing billions of dollars, which is what is going to happen as it relates to the establishment of this authority.
I was just asking the minister about that, and he said that's not unusual in the public sector, especially in the executive agencies.
There are actually examples, and I will concede that you do have government entities that they have a similar government structure, but it doesn't mean that just because you have it in the past, then you should continue to maintain it in this particular instance. This is a specific case which will actually give an authority extraordinary powers over billions and billions of dollars. One projection is in the region of $8.8 billion. So that's not an insignificant sum of money. You don't want to have one individual being given such wide powers. The CEO will actually be able to determine how projects are prioritized, what projects go ahead before others, gets awarded contracts. These are not insignificant matters. And so for these types of decisions to be concentrated in the hands of only one individual, we're of the view that the interest of the public interest, preservation of the public purse, and safeguarding against waste, that would mean that we would get better value for money if we actually have a board in place as opposed to one individual.
The Prime Minister, though, announced this Oversight Committee, JAMROC, I can never remember all of these acronyms, but it's an Oversight Committee that he said is supposed to mirror the kind of work that the Economic Oversight Committee has done in looking at Jamaica's economy and financing, and saying that that is showing the government's commitment to oversight and transparency.
And we're of the view that the better approach would actually be for you to have perhaps parliamentary oversight. And that brings me to one of the issues that we find fairly contentious. The Act specifically provides that there should be a review of the authority and the provisions after a minimum of 5 years, I believe it is, or thereabouts.
5 years.
5 years, yes. We're of the view that in circumstances where you're dealing with such large sums of money, then parliamentary review should actually take place within at least the first 2 years after operation or the act coming into force. We shouldn't have to wait until so much time has passed. Give Parliament an opportunity to fix whatever weakness there exists in the system within a reasonable time.
But in terms of parliamentary oversight, surely though we can't overlook, for instance, the work of the PAAC, Public Administration and Accounts
Committee.
There you go. Thank you so much. Because as we've seen, the PAAC doesn't have to wait any period of time. And we've seen in terms of the response to hurricane, so the committee meeting every 2 weeks in some cases, and really raising important issues. So when you say it's better to have parliamentary oversight, there is so going to be that parliamentary oversight through whether the PAAC or any of the other committees that might consider themselves engaged here.
But to a limited extent, because recall there is also a provision in the Act which specifically states that persons who are employed by the authority are actually restricted in terms of what they can disclose. There's a duty of secrecy. And our fear is that with a provision that is as wide as that particular section, we do see where the risk exists, where persons may refuse or feel as though they are not empowered enough to actually provide the necessary information to the parliamentary committee based on the restrictions in that act. We're of the view that the better course would actually be to specifically state that the act is actually, and the authority is actually subject to, for example, parliamentary oversight, yes, but the Integrity Commission Act, subject to the Access to Information Act, and various other pieces of legislation that would make it clear that they can disclose.
But what kind of process would you want to see for review of the bill itself?
I think it requires a coordinated effort between the opposition, civil society, and members of the public to give their feedback as to how best we can strengthen the legislation, because we want to see it work. We want to see the projects being streamlined. We want to see recovery starting and projects being implemented so that persons can get back to rebuilding their lives and livelihood, but we want to see a certain level of participation. So essentially, I would like to see participatory process going forward.
Gonna have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. And stay tuned when we come back after the break with our representatives of civil society and the various professional groups giving their views on the bill. Stay tuned. Remember our WhatsApp line, 2540693. Soon come.